Howdy folks, Max Caveman here, bringing you to my first episode of the my victory road for the Pokemon TCG for the 2025 season. So I have just come back from my first event for the season, and yeah, things are getting into it. It is good being back in that more competitive environment for the Pokemon TCG. Now I do have a list here with all my results for this event. I'll go down through the statistics at the end, so let's see what we have. So round one starts, and I am facing off against Miraidon Ilecki. This is basically the Miraidon Ilecki, Regilecki structure deck that is available. My opponent for round one was definitely a new player. They were telling me that they had just basically started playing because their kid wanted to start playing, so they definitely weren't sure about how to sequence a couple of things. I felt like I did try and give some pointers at the end. I did end up walking away with a 2-0 victory against Miraidon Ilecki there. So very good start to this event. So moving on to round two. Now this was a very interesting deck to face, because I was facing off against Teal, Ogerpon, and Sinistra. So definitely a different deck that I was used to playing. Playing against. I don't think I've ever faced this particular list before. Basically, the idea is to hit with the smaller Sinistra, discarding energies from your Pokemon. Usually you have enough energies attached, and you are hitting 210 consistently, and especially in my deck, which will actually be in the description if you haven't seen it already. Basically getting hit for my Teal Ogerpons, just getting hit for 210 exact thanks to the Sinistra. A big thing that I actually found was the best card in my game one was actually Jamming Tower. My opponent attached a rescue board, passed, not thinking anything of it, just basically setting up for the next turn. Once a few more energies were in the mix, and basically as soon as that Jamming Tower came out, the rescue board did nothing, and my opponent just simply forgot. They said to me that they were trying to do the mental gymnastics of working out how to get the Radiant Greninja out of the active, and simply forgot that they could attach the energy and pass. So a couple turns went by before things started actually happening, and ultimately it did end up in a 0-2 loss against Ogerpon Sinistra. Definitely very interesting to see. So moving on to round three, and it was my first time facing off against a old staple deck at this point. That was Gardevoir. Now, as I was playing Regidrago, one of the big things that I found was it was getting certain things in the discard as fast as possible. The main one was the Dragapult EX, trying to just simply get the necessary resources out. I did manage to get a pretty easy. Wait, did I win game one or two? Basically, I managed to take a 3 knockout turn simply by 2-turning certain mons, setting them up so that even when they were evolved, basically I put enough damage counters so that a Psychic Embrace to get the retreat cost was enough. So what was it? My opponent Psychic Embraced onto a Curlier that already had some damage on it, and because of that, when I was able to attack my next turn, I was able to knock out both of their Curliers and a Drifloon. Drifloon? Drifloon or Screamtail? I can't remember now. But basically, they had attached enough energies through Psychic Embrace and did too much damage so that I was able to just knock them out with a Phantom Dive. 3 knockouts one turn, and that was more than enough. I had enough HP left on my active Drago V-Star to simply use Raging Bolt to knock out the Raging Bolt's attack to take the Gardevoir EX. So end up with a 2-1 victory there. So definitely a good boost after losing to a Sinistcha. Moving on to round number 4. Now I was facing off against Boltpon. This is the Raging Bolt Ogerpon deck. If you've never faced it, you just basically get a ton of energy onto your field thanks to the Teal Mask Ogerpon's Teal Dance ability, and then you are manual attaching 1 to your active Raging Bolt, and then using Professor Sutter's Vitality to get more energies onto your Pokemon, thereby simply just having enough to pitch for Raging Bolt. Game 1 was actually very interesting because I went first. I got a couple of Ogerpons out, Teal Danced, and then energy switched those 2 energies onto a benched Regidrago, and then my opponent went Prime Catcher into my benched Regidrago, and then managed to set up a unbreakable board and simply just they took it out. They just put enough damage, and I was too slow at that stage. So yeah, I ended up losing game 1. Game 2, my opponent scooped game 2 fairly quickly. We both flipped over the same Pokemon, and then just went, cool, let's started comboing off and ended up getting too far ahead, and my opponent was just like, let's just go to game 3, let's get this over with, because they were not coming back from that game 2. Game 3, very same sort of situation as game 2. I ended up setting up a covert flight lock, and they cannot do anything with that lock, and ultimately they scoop because they are not going to try and dig around those. Another interesting thing about game 1 was my opponent ends up milling the last card out of their deck, and then went Power Pad, shuffle 2 Boss's Orders into their deck, and then Teal Masked, drew 1, and then they just had perfect draws for those 2 games, or those 2 turns, bossing up the lower HP mons on the bench. That was the big deciding factor of game 1. So I end up going 2-1 against Boltpon, and now we are going on to round 5, the final round of the day, and I am facing off against Dragapult. This is the Xatu variant of the Dragapult EX deck. Basically, the idea is to use the Clairvoyant Sense ability on your Zartus to attach energies to your benched Pokemon, and because it isn't type locked, you attach your psychic energies to a Dreepy, Dracloak, or Dragapult, basically any of the line, and you draw 2 cards. So you can, in theory, put 2 energies onto a singular stage of the main attacker in 1 turn, and then just swing Phantom Dive 200 plus the 60 damage to the bench and anywhere you like. So definitely a good sort of deck. So a big thing that we found was the Dragapult is actually quite slow. So game 1, trying to set up, I got enough set up that I basically just went and they started with Rotom V in the active, and simply that was not the best start. Being able to take a knockout with a one shot on the Rotom and then start pinging things on the bench definitely sped up game 1 for me. So yeah, it took game 1. Game 2, it was a bit of a misplay on my part. I went to get set up for a Apex Dragon doing something. I cannot remember what it was. I went to use a switch into I Earthen Vessel for 2 grass energies, energy switched them onto this Regidrago V STAR, went switch, and realized I actually had 3 grass energies and no fire energies, so I could not use Apex Dragon, and I'd already played my switch, so I had to go into my Mew, and because of that, my opponent just was able to put enough little damage counters on enough of my guys that they guaranteed had knockout. In like they had guaranteed game in 2 turns, so I was just like, nah, let's go to game 3 here and see what happens. So I go first. We reveal, and my opponent just has a Tatsugiri in the active. So I mean, if they're going second, so it doesn't really matter. I start putting all the energies out, and I am attaching to the bench because I know very easily that any deck can seriously get something into the active and take a quick knockout nowadays. So I started powering up the bench, and then my opponent just passes back to me, not being able to do anything. Oh, and I just remembered, game 1, one of the interesting things is the jamming tower. I got the game 1 because my opponent needed a card from the deck still, and I had jamming tower out. They inadvertently had used Forest Sealstone with the jamming tower out. Sadly, it doesn't have an effect, and they just realized that's a scam, so they scooped. So that's how I won game 1. So yeah, game 2 was definitely not my best either. So game 3, yeah, they have this one Pokemon in the active, and it wasn't going well for me. For either of us really. We were just trying to get out of this stalemate that we had somehow found ourselves in. and my opponent went to use a Buddy Buddy Puffin and realized 2 Dreepy were prized. So ultimately, because of that, they could not set up a Dragapult EX fast enough, and I won Game 3, ending with a 2-1 record against Zatupult. Now, that means that for this event, I went 4-1, and that placed me in second. Now, that was insane. Almost flawless run, and I placed second. The person that placed first was actually my last round opponent. Basically, it was most likely because I lost earlier in the day, and then he lost later in the day. So that's basically why I came second. So that was second out of 21 players. So there was top 8 points on the line, but I did walk away with a nice 12 points for my first event at a TCG event for this season. So definitely thrilled about that. Especially seeing as last season I didn't get any points until about halfway through, maybe a bit after halfway through. So yeah, definitely good to see. So that's being said, hopefully you found this interesting. Hopefully we'll get to see you again next time. Make sure you do go down to your local events if you are interested in playing any version of the Pokemon games. So we would love to see more people go down to participate in events. But that being said, I'll see you all next time. See ya.